All right, it's showtime. Don't know what happened. Wait, it's too early to be buffered. Hey, anyway, I was saying, what happens if you die in Costa Rica? Well, I can tell you that's a real killjoy, pun intended. Hey, living in Costa Rica would be awesome. But do you know many expats? Well, I guess maybe anywhere, people don't think about the end of life. What's going to happen after you die? I'm not talking about whether you go to heaven or go to hell or whether you even believe in that. Really doesn't matter. What happens to your assets, your assets, if you die in Costa Rica? Well, hey, let's talk about that. And we're going to talk about some different scenarios. What if you have a will? What if you don't have a will? And, don't be thinking, I got a will in the United States. Is that going to be any good in Costa Rica? And what happens if you have Ticos living on your property, maybe someone that's a groundskeeper living in a little bodega or living in a house and you die? Can he take your property? There's a lot of things that could happen. Okay, but let's see if we can find out as we go through some different scenarios and tell you what should you really have. But first, hey, this is your first time here and you're wondering, who is that bald, crazy guy? Well, I'm Alan. Been living in Costa Rica since November 2013. Traveled all over the place, lived in 25 different houses and locations trying to find my perfect slice of paradise. And I finally have. And, but along the way, I made every mistake in the book. I got cheated and conned and ripped off. And, I just found out that, hey, most content providers don't give you the truth. They tell you what they think you want to hear so you can buy more of their product and services. And hey, my channel, hey, everything I do is for free. So hey, if you want to find out information, all you got to do is attend these lives that we have every Sunday or just about every Sunday at 4 o'clock. And then, watch some of the videos and find out what's going on. All right. So hey, let's jump on it. So, hey, first off, hey, welcome to all these folks like Doug coming from Montezuma. He lives in Canada, if I remember right, but he must be home in Costa Rica for a while. Hey, welcome Eduardo and Uncle Chico. Glad you're here. Uncle Chico says, I've been waiting for this video for a long time. It's kind of funny. You would think some of these content creators would have talked about this already. And, but, it's not one of them good things to talk about. So, and since it ain't one of the good things, they're not going to talk about it. Welcome, Gordon. All right, so let's jump into it. Now, as most of you know, I'm taking care of my neighbor. He's 80 years old, and he's about to die, okay? And so I've had to do a lot of research and find out what does happen after you die in Costa Rica. Now, keep in mind that, look, Costa Rica is very, very different than where I'm from in the United States. In the United States, you die, man, you could just put your body on ice, right? The morgue could put you on ice. They're gonna prepare you and all that stuff, but they can put you on ice almost as long as you want while you contact family, prepare and plan for a funeral and get, because in the United States, everybody just lives so far away, and that way they can come and have a funeral together, right? Well, in Costa Rica, look, if I die at 1 o'clock today, within the next 24 hours, I'm in the dirt, okay? They go through things like that. So, you got to be prepared in Costa Rica. I've seen someone die, yesterday, and I mean, like, everything comes to a halt when it comes to that family. And there'll be a pretty huge turnout for the funeral, depending on the popularity of the guy, of course, or the gal. And, so things in Costa Rica are very different. I don't know. I haven't gone to the funerals to find out cost and all of that stuff, but I intend to do that here very soon, okay? Today, I had really hoped and I had planned to have BlueZone Legal, an attorney from BlueZone Legal, here to answer some of these tough questions that I wasn't sure on. And Well, he got sick today. So I've got him scheduled, and hopefully he'll make it next Sunday as we talk about, some different things. So today we'll kind of keep it in general on things that I've researched. And hey, maybe we'll find out I got the information all wrong, but I hope not. So hey, let's jump on it. So in Costa Rica, as I said, people, as soon as they die, within 24 hours, they're in the ground. So you don't have a whole lot of time to plan or prepare. Now, what happens if you die? And let's say you're an expat, okay? And hey, here I am. I own this huge piece of property. I got $1 million house. I don't, but hypothetically, right? Yeah, what happens to your assets? Okay. Well, first off, the most important thing you can do, if you've been living here in Costa Rica any amount of time, and you know that you're going to, I would say a couple of years, because a lot of people come to Costa Rica and after 2 years, they're gone. But let's say that you've been here 2 years and you're liking it so far, or you've accepted the way Costa Rica is. I mean, that's the most important thing to enjoy Costa Rica, is accepting the culture and then finding out how to control your environment and enjoy it. Once you've been here, you know you're not going to leave. You want to contact BlueZone Legal and say, hey, you want to have a will done, okay? And it really is pretty simple. I don't know how much it costs. I know that the guy I'm taking care of has a will, but the most important thing, it needs to be registered, okay? So it needs to be registered, and that way, when you die, all of your assets, well, can be handed on to your heir. Now, the question is, what happens if you die and you didn't think about a will, right? What All right, sorry about that. I'm gonna have to contact Buddy Elon. I don't know why we're buffering. Anyway, let's get on. So in Costa Rica, I had several attorneys, when I was doing retreats, and I had some come and talk about wills in Costa Rica. And in Costa Rica, there are several different types of wills. Matter of fact, if you don't even have a will, but let's just hypothetically, let's say that the guy I'm taking care of, in his last dying breath, he has no will, he doesn't have anything, and he says he wants to give me his property. Okay, well, that could work. Okay, but if he writes it down, then if he writes down that, hey, my last dying wish, I want to give Alan the property, that could work. There's a lot of things that could happen. So it's important. Now, I'm glad Esquire volunteered some information. He says that it costs $480 for wills for him and his wife. Hey, $480, that's nothing, whenever you are looking at making sure that your assets are taken care of or goes to your family, okay? Because in reality, lots of things can happen. And what I have seen in the past where, hey, a gringo leaves, he goes back to the United States, he intends on coming, he never comes back. Maybe he dies in the United States, and guess what? Some Tico squats the property and takes the property. And so that goes back to that scenario that we were talking about, because I know a lot of expats, they're trying to help out locals and stuff. They might have a small cabin on their property, and then that's where the groundskeeper or the maid or someone might be living, so they've got a place to live. Well, guess what? If they're living and you die and you don't have a spouse, they could technically take your land because they could say they've been living there for so long, and so they'd end up squatting and taking your property. So there's a lot of things that you really just got to be careful about, when you are getting older in Costa Rica. And the deal is, it is really, really just so easy to just get a will. And that's not a difficult task. Now, let me just kind of back up and let's talk about a scenario, because I've looked into a few of these things. Let's say that you're an old guy, you're about to die, you don't have any family, okay, or you just don't want your family to bear the burden and the expense of your death, okay? Well, what I didn't know, and I have found out, is that you can tell your family, look, when I die, do not claim my body. I'm like, what do you mean don't claim your body? Well, if you die in Costa Rica, what's going to happen is someone's going to contact 911. Someone's going to contact the Red Cross and say, hey, guess what? Alan up there died. Okay. Well, then they're going to say, well, who's taking responsibility for the body? Well, you say, well, you know what? Maybe you're, I'm his son. No, I'm not taking responsibility. If no one takes responsibility of the body, then Costa Rica has to take it. They will take it, and then they will put it in a grave. Now, I don't know all of the logistics on how that goes about happening, but the point is that if you don't have a will, you haven't paid for funeral expenses, you haven't done anything, well, Costa Rica will put you in a grave. Now, if you're an expat, they will contact the embassy. Like for me, they would contact the U.S. Embassy and let them know that I've died. And of course, the embassy is going to say, well, who's being responsible for the body? And so Costa Rica and the embassy is going to go back and forth to make sure that the guy is taken care of, or the person is taken care of. But if nobody is taking responsibility, Costa Rica will have to pay that expense. Well, you can guarantee you're not going to get a high-end funeral. Now, if you're like me, I really could care less, man. I'm from Louisiana. If I die, I say take me to the ocean and go crabbing, catch some crabs with me. Use me for fish bait. But I know most people ain't like me anyway. So, there's a lot of things that, Costa Rica is very, very different. Now, I saw a comment here that, hang on a second here, that I wanted to see. Now, Esquire shared that he basically drew up his U.S. will, gave it to the attorney, who basically translated it into Spanish, and that was quick, fast, and easy, okay? And he also added that, look, you also need a Costa Rican resident, a permanent resident, to be your executioner, and it cannot be the attorney who drew up the will. That's pretty good to know, because can you imagine the attorney who drew up the will decides to be the executioner and maybe gives it all to himself? I don't know. Could that happen? I don't know. Anyway, hey, that's good input. Thanks, Esquire. So, you don't have to claim the body. Now, let's just say that I die and they contact my next of kin. The embassy contacts my next of kin, and my son claims the body. Well, now he's going to have to pay for all these expenses. Now, obviously, you can have your remains shipped back to the United States, but none of that's going to happen, right? If you're from Europe, you can have your remains shipped back to Europe. So if you don't have things prepared for end of life, none of that stuff is going to happen. Your house, your property, your assets, all of that stuff could end up becoming the property of Costa Rica if you don't have a will, or you don't have your end of life preparations in store so that your family can take care of them. If there's nobody here and you don't have next of kin, you die, and let's say that, maybe family in the United States don't know about it and you don't have a will, your will in the United States may or may not be any good when you come to Costa Rica. And I really wished I had a BlueZone Legal with me today, so hey, I could ask him. But if I remember correctly, it's not going to do you much good. It's a big, big challenge, and that's why it's very, very important to make sure that you get a will and have it registered. Now, the thing is if for some reason last minute you hadn't done it and you're about to die, you can write out something on paper, okay? And if you don't write something out on paper and nobody can test me, and let's say that my neighbor says, hey, I'm going to give you my property, Alan, and he doesn't have a will. So long as nobody contests it, I can end up with that property, okay? And especially since I've been living here for 4 years, right? Now, that's not the kind of guy I am. I'm on this property, and I'm helping his son to inherit the property when this guy dies, right? And, of course, I've helped him to get prepared for end of life, and I've made sure that he has his will and all that kind of stuff, and, taking care of his son and gotten power of attorney and all of that stuff. So let's talk about that. Let's say that you and your wife, you're an expat. you've been here for years, right? But you have family and they're grown children in the United States. Well, obviously, you want to give it to your grown children or whomever, okay? But they're in the United States. The best thing for you to do is get a power of attorney done. Okay, now you need to get that power of attorney in Costa Rica. So, for example, if here I am going to die in Costa Rica, let's say I'm not married, well, then I'm going to give it to my son that's in the United States. I'm going to have him come to Costa Rica, and he's going to go to the attorney's office with me at BlueZone Legal, and we're going to draw up a power of attorney that says, that gives, I'm going to draw up everything. Wait a minute. Let me think about that. I was about to tell you a mistake. I was going to say that I was going to draw up a power of attorney for him in the event of my death. But when I die, the power of attorney dies as well. So you want to make sure that you have that will. Okay. Let me give you this scenario, which may or may not be any good for you. Okay. I've been taking care of this guy, my neighbor, for 12 years since I've come to this piece of property. Okay. And knowing, as old as he is, he could die at any point. Well, he gave me power of attorney a long time ago, to any event he gets in this situation, I can make decisions for him. But when he dies, his power of attorney dies. Well, I knew I was going to help his son to, take advantage of this, but his son lives way off in England. So I got power of attorney for his son. His son came all the way down here, and then we went to the attorney's office, and I got power of attorney. Why? Okay, so think about this, if this would work in your scenario. When the guy that owns his property dies, his power of attorney dies with him. But his son inherits the property, but so that he don't have to come all the way here to do anything, I've got power of attorney. I'm on the property. I know everything about it, and I can help him inherit the property. So my point in telling you this is that, let's say that you're here, your son's in the United States or far off. If you have a good, trusted friend in Costa Rica, you could do the same thing. So let's say that you got a really close friend in Costa Rica. I don't know whether it's a Tico or not. I've always told you, hey, not every Tico is horrible. I've got some good Tico friends, okay? But if you got a good Tico friend and you're absolutely 100% positive, he's not going to do you wrong, well then, hey, let him know. My son's going to inherit the property. Give him power of attorney for your son. That way he can help. Your son won't have to come over here and take care of all of it. He can help take care of all of the logistics of when you die. Because if you're close friends, obviously he ought to know when you're going to die. And so when you die, the first thing that should happen is you should contact 911, which is Red Cross for Costa Rica, and say, hey, that knucklehead gringo, Alan, he died today. I went to go visit him, and I found him dead. So I don't know when he actually died. It could have been died 3 days ago. Matter of fact, he kind of smelling. So anyway, first thing you want to do as soon as you find someone dead is report it to 911. Okay. Then you need to immediately contact the embassy. So if you know that guy's from the United States, contact United States Embassy in Costa Rica, or the British Embassy in Costa Rica, whatever. Okay. So you contact the embassy. You let them both know, and then all of a sudden those two are going to begin working out. Red Cross is going to send someone out here to look at the body, identify the body, and make sure that the body is in fact dead, and make sure there's no foul play. Did something happen? The caretaker pushed him off a cliff. Anyway, that kind of stuff that you need to be careful of. So I'm taking a look at a couple of these things here. Now, this guy says, if you don't claim the body will be buried in a common grave with other bodies. I don't know about that. I've trying to find out the answer to that question. That's kind of what we've assumed, but I hadn't found an actual answer for that. So, hey, Danter, if you know for certain that's the answer, or maybe you just comment. Tell me. So this guy says, I do. I didn't ask you to marry me. He says, yes, it's true. Okay. And he says it's true. So now I can't vouch for that, but he says it's true that if you don't claim the body, it goes into a common grave with other people. Hey, look, Costa Rica, I would not be surprised. So anyway, that's something that's something for you to think about. And he says, I am a Costa Rica native. All right. Now, now, okay, so you're a Costa Rica native. I'm glad you said that, okay? But that could be true only for Costa Ricans. What I do know is that, hey, the guy I'm taking care of, he's not from here. He's from England. And the embassy in England, from my understanding, is actually going to take that body and put it in their grave. So I don't think that for this particular guy, I don't think he would go into a common grave, although I could be completely wrong. It's just that the information I've gotten so far, I think the embassy will actually take his body, and the embassy must have a little plot somewhere to where when, one of their national citizens die, they get put in that instead. But anyway, I was hoping that if, I would have more information for you, but I'm just based on some of the stuff that I'm learning about because I'm going through this scenario right now. And of course, this guy says, hey, my mother was buried in that common grave because his brothers didn't claim her body. And that doesn't surprise me because a lot of Ticos, maybe they don't have the money, so they just don't claim the body. And so, hey, maybe they didn't care where she was going to be buried at, And hey, thank you so much, Uncle Chico, who donated to help support this channel to keep getting awesome free information. If you want to do the same thing, you can. Just look down there in the chat box, click on that $sign, and you can donate $1 million too, okay? And we greatly, greatly appreciate any amount of money that you give, whether it's no money because you're giving with a like and a share, or if you give $1 or $2, that's great. You give $1 million. That's awesome. Then I can afford to have a casket. All right. So, in Costa Rica, for me, I don't have a ton of assets, but regardless of whether I got a ton of assets or not, I would at least want my assets to go to whomever I give it to. But what I do know is that because squatters do have a lot of rights, you got to be careful who's on your property. And, maybe that squatter couldn't take your whole property, but he can definitely take the spot that he's on. Now, Esquire brings up a comment here. And, hey, this is good. This is interesting. He says, graves in Costa Rica are rented. The body can be brought up and disposed of to make room of someone else. How do you know that, Esquire? Have you done it before? and this guy says that is 9138. That is correct. So, hey, this Tico confirms it. So, Costa Rica is very, very different. It kind of goes back to if you watch that short, Dorothy, you're not in Kansas anymore. You do have to be careful. And Esquire, he replied, legal research, LOL. Hey, I'm glad you found out. Esquire used to be an attorney in the United States. I hear he's a pretty smart guy. Anyway, so give me your comments. Give me your questions. Give me your input. I know for me, taking care of somebody in Costa Rica, I think over in some of the, like San Jose and metropolitan area, they do have nursing homes where when they do get older, but there's not a whole lot. That's not typical in Costa Rica. In the United States, when you get ready to, you're getting old, kids get tired of their parents, they throw them in a nursing home, But in Costa Rica, most of the time, whenever you get old, your children are taking care of you. Somebody is taking care of you, okay? Now, Rick asked a question here. It says, can an American legally own property in Costa Rica? Absolutely, okay? So, matter of fact, you don't even have to be a resident, okay? Anybody from anywhere can come to Costa Rica, buy a piece of property, okay? And you can legally own it, okay? With the exception, there are properties that are right on the beach. Some are titled, very few, but those that aren't titled, well, then you're really just leasing it from the government for 20 years. But then part of it, it can't be 100% in your name, so you don't really own it. You're actually leasing it long term, okay? So that's just a little caveat. Now, and this guy, Dancer, says only wealth people own the lot for the members. So I think what he's saying here is that, you know, if you're really wealthy, you can own your own burial plot. See? So, hey, so I lost track of where I was at a while ago. But anyway, okay. That's what he's saying. He says, yeah, if you're wealthy enough, you can own the own lot. How interesting, right? Can you imagine you get buried and then they dig you up 10 years later, 5 years later, and dispose of you so they can make room for others? That's kind of funny, right? Wow. No, I'm not old, Esquire. I just kind of lost my train of thought, not because I'm old. I just got off on a rabbit trail. I ain't never getting old. What'd you say your name was again? Oh. All right. So anyway, Costa Rica is very, very different. And it's really, really important. You know, when you come to Costa Rica, the first thing that you need to do is learn more and more and more about the culture. The more you learn about the culture, the better prepared you're going to be. But things are so very different in Costa Rica that, hey, look, even a will, getting ready for the end of life, getting buried, you know, all that stuff, it happens tremendously different than where you're from or where I'm from in the United States. So Eduardo says, when my wife's mother died, Tico's son just came to see if she left anything for them, and she told them nothing. Get out. You never cared about her. Well, I'm not surprised. Oh, you know, I'm glad you asked this, Janice. Janice says, hey, do they have cremation? And yes, they do. You can be cremated. I have found out. I don't know what that costs. But yes, from my understanding, you can be cremated in Costa Rica. So, this is a dead topic, isn't it? Pun intended. So, hey, give me your thoughts, give me your input, give me your questions. And next week, hopefully we'll have an attorney here. He was really sick today. But next week, we'll have an attorney that's going to ask some questions. You can ask him questions about different types of wills and what happens in the event you don't have a will. But the most important thing here, really, as cheap as it is to get a will, get you a will done and make sure that your assets are indeed protected. All right. So, hey, someone give me some input, give me some thoughts. I'm trying to think of all of the different things that I was doing some research on, but I did so much research, it really is mind-blowing, all the different things. Because, like, if you die in a hospital, because the most important thing is that after you die, you need to get a death certificate, which could take a little bit of time depending on the scenario. Depending on the scenario, on whether if you saw a doctor or not. For example, this guy, he doesn't actually have a doctor, and he's actually a tourist. He's not even a resident. So when he dies, since he doesn't have a doctor and hasn't seen a doctor, when he dies and Red Cross comes out here, okay, and they come to check to see how he died, first thing they're going to want to know is who's his doctor. He doesn't have one. Okay, so they can't check to see when he was last seen, and they can't check and see if he has a history, what kind of problems he has. Okay, so it is important that you have a doctor or you've seen a doctor so that they can then, when you die, say, so-and-so is my doctor. he doesn't have a doctor. And so in this case, it's going to make things a little bit difficult for him to actually get a death certificate, but he will. It's just going to take time for a guy to come over here and verify that he's dead. All right. So, hey, I'm just kind of scanning through some of the questions here. But hey, there's not a whole lot of questions. But if you have questions about anything, whether it's on end of life or anything in Costa Rica, well, hey, you're welcome to ask that question, and we'll be sure to try to do my best to answer those questions. Because I didn't prepare like I would have, because I thought I had a guy that was prepared to answer all your questions. But that's Costa Rica. And Jose Pablo replied to Janice saying, yes, we do have cremation. All right. So, living in Costa Rica, as I've always said, I love it. It was very challenging for me the first 8 years. But once I got onto this piece of property and I can control my environment, it's really been just a huge blast. It's been quite enjoyable. Of course, I love building and all that stuff and trying to set up a homestead where hopefully at some point in time I'll be 100% or as close to 100% as possible of being self-sufficient. Costa Rica is a great place to actually do that, because in Costa Rica you got this great temperature to where you can grow all year long. Now, Rick Morin says, if I have a will in Illinois, will it be honored in Costa Rica? I don't think so. And Esquire says no, from his research, it won't be. So it's really, really important to have a will in Costa Rica, Rick. Thanks for that question. So give me some input there. If you're living in Costa Rica, hey, if you've got a will and you live in Costa Rica, if you have a Costa Rican will, give me a shout out. Give me a 10. Yes, I live in Costa Rica. I have a Costa Rican will. Hey, if you live in Costa Rica and you don't have a will, put a 1. I'd like to know who all has a will and who hadn't. I mean, how many? Because I haven't seen any, the people that are doing videos on Costa Rica, creating content in Costa Rica, haven't seen anyone actually talk about dying in Costa Rica. Matter of fact, out here, of course, I do live in a very, very remote area. But I want to say it was a couple of years ago, a guy that owns property back here, he was found dead out on his property. And it was 4 or 5 days before they actually found him. And he used to have a whole bunch of cows and stuff. And he had a bunch of Nicaraguans that was working for him. Well, they never did find out what was the... or who killed him. They know he was killed, okay, but they don't know who killed him, okay? And of course, all his cows went missing. So rumor has it that some of the people that worked for him killed him, took his cows, sold it for money, and made off with a fortune. So, you do need to be prepared, and especially if you live in remote areas, you need to be prepared. And we'll talk about crime for just a moment, because crime, some of the crime has gotten so bad that there's gangs that are actually targeting expats that live in remote areas, so that they can try to steal what they have. So, hey, and what happens sometimes, people break in and they try to defend themselves or take charge and end up getting killed. So there's a lot of reasons why you need to be prepared and have a will. Whoa, let's see. Esquire says there is a different style of law here. U.S. British common law. Costa Rica is more Neapolitan law. Okay. Don't know what all that means, but that's good to know. All right. So Rick says, I have a trusted lawyer here in the States. Can he negotiate a will in Costa Rica? I don't think so. you see, a will in Costa Rica has to be registered in Costa Rica, has to be notarized in Costa Rica, it has to be registered in Costa Rica. And so I'm sure that he would not be able to do it. I could be wrong, but I'm almost certain that wouldn't happen. And Esquire replies and says, only with a Costa Rican lawyer can you get a Costa Rican will. Now, Jose says, wait for the next government to see real changes in justice and security. So, hey, he's talking about, I think, the new government, and you correct me, Jose, but I think the new elections, I think, are in February. So there'll be a new administration in. And so he believes that there's going to be some real changes in justice and security. And that might be quite interesting. Of course, it's kind of like anywhere. Costa Rica, every 4 years, there's a change in administration because they can't serve 2 terms back to back. So that's kind of bad and good. And in my opinion, that's the reason why Costa Rica is so very undeveloped, a third world. You get one good president in there, and he's doing some good. And then by the time he gets something good, he has to get out. And I've got a really, really good Tico friend. He's my best friend. And he says, hey, look, he says, Costa Rica is a third world country, will always be a third world country. And the reason it's a third world country is because everybody has third world thinking. He says, until the Ticos get rid of this third world thinking, we're going to continue to be a third world country, and it's just going to always suck. Okay, so if assets are joint with your spouse, shouldn't they have right of survivorship? So that's a really great question, Janice. And in my from what I have found out, for example, I've got a new wife, right? Obviously, I'm going to have a will for her, right? And she'll have a will for me because, she's young and younger than I am, but I will probably outlive her because, I just ain't planning on dying. I'm kind of like Peter Pan. I ain't never growing up. So anyway, when I die, she will inherit everything, but that's only if she is here. If she's here, it's going to make it so much easier for her to inherit everything here. But let's just say that she's not here. Well, then the Ticos could take the property. So that's why it's really, really important, and regardless of rights of survivorship, okay? So it's really important to make sure that your spouse is protected. And, really, if you're in Costa Rica and you and your, y'all are married and you're together, one of you die, let's just say, hopefully that you don't both die in a car accident at the same time. Well, then whoever lives ends up owning the property. And Esquire says you can have your will set up as a sole survivor, okay? And he adds in there, Janice, we have a corporation that owns everything, so the will transfers basically stock. And as far as the new administration and politics goes, Jose puts in there, we're in the middle of a cultural shift, and cultures create wealth or poverty. And, I have to agree with you there, Pablo. Jose, you see the culture, and if you understand the culture in Costa Rica, it's very, very different than the United States. And they have this real big mentality, and it's not bad in some things, but it's family first, and it's so family first that, hey, if they have a business and they decide to just close the business, even though the business is normally open, Monday through Sunday, they just close. They could care less that they're going to lose customers or piss customers off because they decided to take off and I closed. And so that's the reason a lot of businesses in Costa Rica end up closing down, because then the person who has the business decides to just take off and spend time with family. So a lot of Costa Ricans, it's like, well, I don't care that I'm broke. I'm spending time with family. And there's nothing wrong with spending time with family. But if you're so far in left field, you can't make money. And in my opinion, that's the reason there's so much poverty in Costa Rica. However, it is just expensive to live in Costa Rica. And, you know, the labor, they don't get paid a whole lot. Minimum wage for just an average laborer is 1,500 colones an hour. That's $3. Okay. How do you live? Okay. Say, let's look at this. A guy works 40 hours at 1,500 colones. He makes 60,000 colones. That's the equivalent of $120 a week. How do you live on $120 a week? Multiply that by 4, that's $480. Well, look, $480 because you're a laborer, whether you're working in the yard or not. That's under $500. Most Ticos are living on that kind of money. Okay, so hey, a lot of that makes a humongous difference when you come into Costa Rica. You know, and that's the reason Costa Rica is what it is. Jose says that taxes and regulation keeps us underdeveloped. I'll agree in part with that, because, you know, everyone has to pay taxes. And here's what I see happening, and this is just my opinion. You know, even the United States government is crooked, and a whole lot of money goes into taxpayer money goes into the politicians' pockets. Okay, well, Costa Rica is just trying to do the same thing as the United States government, put a lot of these taxes in their pocket. But Costa Rica is a tiny country, so they don't get nearly the taxes the United States gets. And so what happens is politicians are putting a lot of that tax dollars in their pocket, and instead of using those taxes for road development, schools, and all that other stuff. So yes, taxes not being used for development ends up keeping Costa Rica very undeveloped. And Esquire agrees, it is worse in the United States. Now, Jose says they are supposed to work a 48-hour week. And hey, I'm glad that you threw that in there, Jose, because most Ticos work Monday through Saturday. They normally work a six-day week, 8 hours a day. Now, here's a good question, because I had this conversation with someone today. Most Ticos work a 48-hour week, okay? Now, Jose, for most Ticos, when they have their lunch break, whether it's a 30-minute lunch break or an hour lunch break, is the employer required to pay that same salary for their lunch break, or is that up to the employer's discretion? Because in the United States, no, the employer doesn't pay for your lunch break. You come to work, he might give you a 15-minute break in the morning, 15-minute break in the evening, an hour lunch. But you still got to put in a full 8-hour day. You get your breaks, but they're not paid breaks, okay? And I think there's a lot of this too. Eduardo says 98% of the problem in Costa Rica is that soccer is more important than the problems in life. In Costa Rica, there's not a single problem in life that's important. Nothing. No matter what happens in Costa Rica, the answer is pura vida. Pura vida. Pura vida. That's the answer for everything. Some people say that's the reason that a lot of Ticos live longer than most people, or Costa Rica is one of the happiest countries in the world. It's because really they just don't get shaken up about anything. It's pura vida this, pura vida that, which is one of the reasons I think they're a less developed country. Jose says that, and he's talking to Esquire, he says the regulation and bureaucracy and the taxes are worse in Costa Rica. It's harder to open up a business in Costa Rica than it is in the United States. And I got to agree with that. Costa Rica makes it very, very, very difficult on business owners. And then they tax these business owners to death. So I don't know of a single honest business in Costa Rica, because every business is paying money under the table to keep from having to pay these exorbitant taxes and fees and everything else. You know, my best friend owns a couple of businesses, And he tells me all the time about how difficult it is to have a business in Costa Rica. And Jose, in response about that eating lunch, he says he works in a free economic zone, works Monday through Friday, 9 hours daily, including lunch hours, to try to get in his 48 hours a week. Okay, but are your employers required to pay for your lunch break? Or you don't get paid for your lunch break and you get to go eat lunch and just chill, right? Or do they pay your normal salary? Let's say that, Jose, you're getting paid 1,500 colones, or you're getting paid 2,000 colones an hour. Does your employer pay for your lunch? And is that included in your 48 hours a week? Because can you imagine you're working 6 days a week, well, and you got an hour lunch, and I'm having to pay 6 hours of time where all you did was eat, okay? And you didn't benefit me any. All right. So I'm not getting any comments on who lives in Costa Rica and has a will, okay? And who lives in Costa Rica and doesn't have a will. If you live in Costa Rica and you have a will, put a 10. If you live in Costa Rica and you don't have a will, but you want more information and you'd like BlueZone Legal to answer your questions, well, put a 1. You know, matter of fact, hey, let me know. Are you enjoying this information? Are you glad you got someone helping give you information about death in Costa Rica? And, you know, I've got this guy scheduled to come next week, but hey, maybe it's extremely important. See, Gordon, he lives in Costa Rica, been here a long time. He does have a will, and he is prepared to die. Would you like to make an appointment and see if we could do that early? No, I'm teasing. I'm teasing. We could arrange something quick. And Jose says, as far as that meal is included in the salary. Salary is calculated as 8 hours per 30 days, including resting days. Well, that's interesting. It's included in, see, most ticos. Now, keep in mind, I think most ticos only get about a 30-minute lunch, I think. I don't think anyone actually gives them an hour lunch. I know I ran into that problem when, you know, building a great big road. And so I had a backhoe driver and dump truck driver. And, you know, you're paying 25,000 colones an hour for them. Okay. Well, when it's lunchtime, I made it very clear before I hired them, I'm not paying for your lunch. But they wanted to get paid for their lunch. I'm like, we're taking an hour for lunch, 25,000 colones. I'm like, dude, I'm not paying $50 for you to have lunch. That's all it is to it. You ain't working for me if you expect me to pay you lunch. But that's when I ran into a problem in finding out, hey, most Costa Ricans expect to get paid for their lunch. But of course, you know, this scenario, I'm sure these guys are just trying to take advantage of the gringo. All right, guys. Hey, I'm not going to drag this out. If you've got nothing else for me, then I'm going to go ahead and shut it down. So, hey, this is last call for the alcohol. I mean, this is last call. Put your questions and get your answers now. So, hey, if you got something that's really important you want to find out about, hey, put your questions in the chat box. I'll do my best to answer those questions if I know the answer. If I don't know the answer, then, hey, we'll ask Esquire to make one up for us. Woohoo! No. All right. Hey, now let's talk about the weather for just a second. Here we are in summertime. So here it is, middle of December. And we're still getting a little bit of rain. So the weather pattern looks like it's a little different this year. And Esquire says, hey, do you think you'll be able to make the fishing trip in January? Yes, I think I do. So me and Esquire are going fishing in January. And we were going to go in December. Guess what? The guy that I'm taking care of hasn't died yet. And I don't mean that in a bad way, because he's ready to die. And he's like, you know, I go and see him and I say, hey, good morning. And he's like, good morning, you know. He's like, I can't believe I didn't die last night. You know, and he's like, this is just going on and on and on and on, you know. And so, hey, in the evening, I was like, here in a little while, I'll go check on him, see how he's doing. You know, I'll stay with him an hour or two, and then I'll leave, and I'll be like, okay, I'll see you in the morning. He says, probably not. I said, well, I'll see you. You might not see me. He's like, well, I hope I don't see you. Anyway, I think he hasn't eaten in about 10 days, so he's probably not going to last much longer. Well, fortunately for him, he's ready to go. He's ready to go. So it's not a bad thing. Hey, Eduardo says it's sunny and 77 degrees in beautiful Fort Lauderdale, South Florida. Hey, 74 degrees where Esquire's at, no antennas. And but Rick says, man, thank you. It's really cold here in Chicago. Well, right here, we got beautiful weather, and I think it's about 75 degrees right now. It's nighttime. But hey, you want to know something that's kind of funny? It is colder in the summertime than it is in the wintertime. Or let me make that clear. When I wake up normally at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, it could easily be 58, 59 degrees, 57 degrees in the summertime. But in the wintertime, well, in the wintertime, it's always a blanket of clouds, and it'll be slightly warmer at nighttime. It might be 64, 65. But in the summer, clear skies, beautiful stars. Matter of fact, my wife and I saw a shooting star just the other night. We've seen a couple of them in the last few weeks. So anyway, hey, folks, we'll see you next time, next Sunday. Let's hope that we have a representative from BlueZone Legal down here giving us the ins and outs of what you should do with a will in Costa Rica. Talk to you guys next week. Pura vida! I don't like that word.
You don't like that word?
I don't like that word.